What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Absolute Strength Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Hunt, and I'm back with another episode 134, with Dr. Mike Israetel, PhD in Sports Physiology, former professor of exercise and sports science, a wealth of knowledge on training and nutrition. And somehow we managed to go an entire podcast without talking about training or nutrition. Let that sink in. It's actually kind of funny. And we did talk a little bit of training and nutrition, but for the most part, this episode was all about wrestling, MMA, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. A very cool episode, but I bring on a PhD in sports physiology, and we don't even do an episode about training. Man, shaking my head. But no, it was really cool. It's what we wanted to do in a way, because I wanted to have Mike on for a couple of reasons. One, the dude has so much knowledge. I mean, he's, like I said, a wealth of knowledge of training, nutrition, but he's a guy that I think I could relate with. I mean, he has a wrestling background. He's big in jiu-jitsu. Like, we have a lot of things in common here. And he's been on the podcast circuit, so to speak. He's been on a bunch of podcasts, so I kind of wanted to go down a different direction. So we went completely down a different direction. But we already got it set up. We're going to do another one. We're going to do another episode where we talk about training and nutrition specifically for an entire episode. So don't worry. So this is kind of like the appetizer. This is pretty much the appetizer before the the training and nutrition episode. But don't sleep on this one. This one's actually... It's really good. This one it probably is going to end up being my favorite episode. We haven't done the other two, maybe even might end up doing more podcasts, but it was really cool. Really entertaining, talking about some different stuff that you probably haven't heard Mike talk about all that much. So you'll be entertained. Before we get to the episode, as always, if you want a discount on PR Breaker Materia, the pre-workout that I use and recommend, prbreaker.com, discount code HUNT10 will save you some change on that. As always, if you enjoy this episode, if you enjoyed the Absolute Strength Podcast, just tell one friend. Tell one friend about the podcast, and I will forever be grateful. And if you have any questions about the podcast or any recommendations for upcoming episodes, feel free to hit me up, kylehuntfitness@gmail.com, or just shoot me a DM on Instagram @huntfitness. All right, let's get to this episode. Let's talk some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, some wrestling, some MMA, and we'll sprinkle in a little bit of training and nutrition too. Dr. Mike Israetel. I will say this, Mike, you're the one dude who seems to be on the podcast circuit, as I like to call it, on like all of them. But every time I ask people, like, hey, who are some people you want me to bring on the show? Your name always comes up.
Oh, that's great. It's better than the alternate news is like, no one has ever asked about you. But,
yeah, definitely. Well, it's wild because sometimes, like, I don't know, especially with fitness podcasts, that it seems like a lot of the information just gets recycled. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the same people going on the same podcast saying the same shit. They almost have like their spiel already planned out, like what they're gonna say. It seems like
100%. I have two questions for you before we start. Are we recording already?
We're always recording, but we don't have to be.
No worries.
All right.
Is 45 minutes okay?
That's perfect.
Okay, great. Am I allowed to swear? Or
100%.
I didn't?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. Oh, fuck, man.
Yeah, this is open. This is 100%
great.
Open. Yeah, I like to keep this is like super laid back. Try to get into some good information, but whatever direction we end up going down, I'm 100% cool with it. So
cool. Well, you let me know which direction you want to go in, because I certainly wouldn't want to regurgitate anything you've already heard before.
Well, you have a lot of talking points. There's a lot of different directions we could go. I kind of was wanting to get into some of your background in. I know you wrestled in high school, but I feel like my audience is like, here Kyle goes on wrestling again. I talk about wrestling a lot. I'm a wrestler.
Oh, no shit. How long have you wrestled for?
Well, I mean, I don't anymore. I wrestled from the time I was like 5 or 6 all the way out through high school. And then I got into lifting, and then lifting kind of took over my obsession I had for wrestling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right on. Well, let's feed the beast then.
Yeah.
So I wrestled in high school.
Yeah.
And then in college, I started powerlifting. And then by the time that I finished my PhD program, I was bodybuilding and I was doing a lot of walking cardio, and I was tired of doing walking cardio and wasting my time.
Yep.
So I got the temptation to go back into combat sport, and I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I've been doing that for almost 5 years now.
Yeah.
And that is super awesome. And it's very similar to wrestling. And I can't ever really imagine how I ever left the grappling sports, because now I'm like completely addicted to jiu-jitsu. And if I don't do it for, like more than half a week, I start to like have dreams about it.
Yep.
So like, it's funny. I had a dream. I took a break from jiu-jitsu for 2 weeks a little while ago to heal up some injuries. It worked great. I came back super sharp. It was awesome.
Yeah.
But like during those 2 weeks, I had one dream where I was taking inside singles off of a couple of guys in a row, and it was just so sharp, boom, boom, boom. And then I was like so happy in the dream. I was like, oh my God, just when you reach that inside of that knee and you're like, you're done. And then I woke up and I realized that I wasn't changing levels in the dream. And I was like, fuck, that was all a lie.
That's so funny. I literally have dreams like that still, where I'll be like, in a dream, like, man, I hit like an awesome double in that dream, but then it'll hit me. I'm like, but man, I had like no setup. I just shot in.
No,
and he didn't do
garbage.
anything.
It's just like a kid playing. You're like, this is, oh my God, it's embarrassing that I didn't even snap down or anything.
Yeah.
It's just, and that's the kind of stuff that means we're completely insane.
Yeah, 100%. So I actually just got into jiu-jitsu this year, and I was kind of thinking the same thing. Like, I can't believe I went so long outside of grappling. Like, the first day I walked in, and the guy was
smell.
Yeah, seriously, just like the mats, and like, I didn't really know what to expect or anything, and the guy was like, hey, if you want to... I went in on a Saturday, too, which was, like, just complete open mats. Like, it wasn't...
Totally.
So, I didn't even really know what I was getting into, and he's like, yeah, so it's, like, open mats, so there's, like, no real instruction or anything. It's just kind of... You can jump in if you want. You don't have to. And I'm like, well, I'm here. I'm going to jump in. And just went, like, 2 hours straight of just...
Well, so you're still in shape. That's great.
Well, I was about dead, but...
Yeah, but you also know how to manage your movement, too, from wrestling.
Yeah, a little bit of efficiency, a little bit. I definitely was huffing and puffing and dying, but everyone else seemed like I was better off than I was. Everyone's like, oh, man, I can't believe you haven't... Are you sure you haven't been rolling around? I'm like, well, I haven't. I'm just luckily strong, so I can kind of make you work harder than I'm working.
For sure. And also, you wrestled for how many years total?
Probably like 12 years.
Yeah, that. So when they say have you rolled around, your answer should have been yes for 12 years.
Yeah.
Right. You're definitely not what would call like a classic white belt.
No.
Where it's not. Wrestling is just the first thing they have to teach you in wrestling. Transition to jiu-jitsu is here are positions you think are good that are just terrible. Don't get into them.
Oh yes, that was still like super hard to.
Yeah, not falling on your back.
Yeah, because like in my head, like going to your back is just like that's never an option. So you give someone your back before you roll to your back, and that's the exact opposite.
This is the worst idea you could have had. Yep. And then the other one is the next most important, I think, is places not to stick your arms and legs that you're going to get them broken off.
Yep.
And then after that, man, it's if I have a wrestler that doesn't know any jiu-jitsu techniques, but they know not to get into bad positions and they know not to stick their limbs in bad places, it's already a really tough role.
Yeah.
And then teaching a wrestler how to pass guard is the easiest thing in the world.
Oh, yeah.
And then you got a guard passing machine. And then everything else on top just grows normally. But if you have someone who doesn't get into bad positions, passes guard like crazy and moves well, that's already like a blue belt, basically, like after several weeks of rolling. So how long have you been doing it? So
I've been doing it for the last 2 or 3 months, but the last month I haven't been as consistent. I need to get back into fitting into my schedule. It's just tough with training and everything and with the business. But yeah, I've been about 3 months into it right now.
Keep it up, man. And then when you feel good, get into a competition. So tell you what, competition's a little different.
Yeah.
You'll have people standing up against you who've never wrestled. The majority of them haven't. and you're like, what is, oh my God, this is going to be real bad for them. And it is bad for them because they do completely ridiculous things.
Yeah.
They'll just walk in with their feet close together, like walk up to you and you're like double leg.
Yeah.
And then once they're on their back, they play a totally different game. And if you can develop a good smash passing game, then they're already like at a deficit as soon as the match starts. So there's actually a guy, I don't know how many years of jiu-jitsu he had. I don't think he had even months. He put on a gi and put on a blue belt, and he was a lightweight black guy. I think he was 4-time NCAA champ.
Well, there's only been a couple 4 times.
Yeah, he's one of these rare ones.
He might have been a 3-time. I think there's honestly,
maybe a 3-time.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think there's only there's only like 4 or 4-time.
Yeah. So maybe he was 3-time. Maybe it was just like the last his college year he won it or something. Maybe it's a mislabeled video. Who knows? But he went all the way to the finals at Blue Belt Worlds or Pan Ams, Blue Belt Pan Ams, I think.
Are you talking about, is it Ed Ruth?
I think so.
Yeah,
he's like skinnier, facial hair.
Yeah, he fights in, I think, Bellator.
Okay.
But he's doing a lot of jiu-jitsu stuff. Yeah, he's like a 3-time NCAA champion.
Yeah,
just a freak.
maybe. Yeah, he's a lighter guy, I guess.
Yeah, I think,
like
I don't know.
150, 170 sort of thing.
I think 170 maybe.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
but anyway, so the highlight video from Worlds is hilarious because he just tools. Everybody's just like, takedown. He just mostly lets him up and then just takes him down again. And just like everyone's up by like 15 points.
Yeah.
And then he runs into a kid who's been training jiu-jitsu ever since he was little.
Yeah.
And he's Brazilian. And he sets up an armbar. The guy gets out of it and he just flips his hips the fastest I've ever seen and just gets the other arm. And you're like, ugh. The guy taps and you're like, okay, this is at the very cusp of jiu-jitsu, training in pure jiu-jitsu. There's no amount of wrestling that can get you out of that.
Yeah. There's it's like anything else when you are that specific. I mean, the general, wrestling ability is only going to take you so far when you go up against 100%. Someone that specific in a sport.
100%. And that kid, won Blue Belt Worlds or Pan Ams. I mean, he can go to most gyms and beat most black belts. So that kind of tells you the level he's working at. And there's only so much you can do.
I'm pretty sure it was probably Ed Ruth because I think I might have saw the same. I don't think I watched the whole video, but I think I saw the video pop up or something.
Yeah,
maybe I just heard about it.
Yeah, I'd have to look that up. But it was hilarious because of, he's running into blue belts that are going to Pan Ams. They're good guys. Maybe wrestled in high school, maybe didn't. Yeah, you're going up against a multi-time, D1 wrestling champion. You're going to get taken down.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And then you're going to get taken down again. And then again, right? Takedown, guard pass. That's already like 15 points, after 3 minutes. And then what, So.
Well, you see the same thing in the UFC, in MMA.
100%.
You see the same thing. It's really at that point, the jiu-jitsu guys are just going to learn takedown defense, really.
100%. Or a really nasty bottom game, and then they bait the takedown.
Yeah, then they just give it almost.
100%.
Where it's, who was Damian Maia when he fought Woodley? That was kind of the game plan there, I think. But I don't even know if I don't even think Woodley got many takedowns on that fight. I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that fight. I actually have heard. Okay, so do you follow MMA pretty?
Yeah, pretty closely.
So there's been some speculation as to who Khabib is going to fight next / run into problems with. Who was that one guy that
Ben Askren?
No, a black dude, and he's a top of the division. He had like nasty MRSA on his chest last time.
I know who you're talking about. Oh. He didn't just fight, did he? It was a while ago. He's from Detroit, I think.
Yeah,
I can't think of what the guy's name is, though.
Anyway, they're saying that guy might have better wrestling than Khabib.
Mm-hmm. Kind of hard to believe.
That's so hard to believe.
It's hard to believe.
Khabib has taken everyone down. First of all, some guys have been a little bit better at resisting, but no one to any real good degree. And then just the execution is like literally Olympic caliber.
Oh yeah. His
was
wrestling.
Kevin something?
Kevin Lee?
No. Kevin Lee. That's
Kevin
what
Lee.
it is. Yeah.
Yep.
So they say that fight could be really interesting because he can punch better than Khabib,
yeah,
which I can believe.
Really good wrestling.
And he has great wrestling, but you know, one of those things, if you put two wrestlers up against each other, whoever has the best wrestling, the other guy has no other tools, really. You know, like if it's a good jiu-jitsu guy against a good wrestler, at least you have an asymmetrical fit and it's interesting. But if Khabib turns out to be the better wrestler, then it's, you know, it's going to go like all the rest of his fights.
Well, that's kind of the story of, are you familiar with Ben Askren at all?
Yes, I am. Through his wrestling, not through his MMA.
All right. Well, yeah. Well, that's kind of the deal with him. Like, he had like a big falling out with Dana White. I think there was like some shit talking involved, but a lot of it was based off from his fights just not being entertaining. You know, because he just like wrestles you.
Yeah.
and you can't do anything, so he just does what he wants and does a little ground and pound. That's about it.
I'm torn on that. I'm torn from two sides. One side is we're trying to determine who the best fighter is.
Yep.
And look, motherfucker, you have a problem with a guy wrestling you, you better punch him in the face or something.
Yeah, you got to do something.
Or out wrestle him. You know, if he's just beating you and you're helpless, that's not, you know, so I think it's never the fighter who lost job to be like, he just wrestled me. Like, shut up, you little bitch.
Yeah, it just sounds like a
don't let it
fucking
happen.
excuse. That's all
Totally.
it sounds like. Yeah.
Totally. But from Dana's perspective, the UFC is not just about finding the best fighter in the world. It's also about entertainment.
Yep.
And people want to see at least some diversity, charitably. Not charitably, they want to see two monsters punch each other in the face repeatedly, right? So ideally they want to see no wrestling at all, maybe.
Yeah, kind of.
But if any wrestling, suplexes only.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where there's that balance, you know. I don't know what if there's even a resolution to that, because like a part of me is like, so what Dana can do is just schedule Ben in not as often as Ben would like. But then at some point, if he's beating everyone, I mean, he needs title shots and he needs shots to go up. And but then again, you can fill the rest of the card with bangers, so to say. You know, it's tough because, you know, and the fans will eventually rebel. Like if there's a guy beating everyone, even if people don't like how he's beating them, I think most fans that are not completely insane realize that whoever's winning's got to be given a shot. You know, the same critique actually could be applied to John Jones, believe it or not.
Yeah.
John Jones is a pick apart guy, and people like, but nobody's beating him, so go fuck yourself, right?
Yeah.
But then again, if you're Dana White, whatever, like, you got to wonder, like the Jones fights, people, after a while, people just stop going to those fights, sort of, because they're like, well, you just know what's going to happen. He's going to use his insane reach to keep distance and elbow people a little bit, and that's it, right?
Yeah,
so
I've always been a big John Jones fan. Actually, I met him when we were in high school. I wrestled varsity in 8th grade, and he's from the same area as me. So when he was
is this New York or
New
no?
York, yeah, upstate New York is where I'm from.
Good wrestling up there.
Yeah, yeah.
There's not shit else to do. It's too cold. You
wrestle. It's too damn cold. It's like New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio.
Yep.
All there is. But But no, like so he was a senior when I was in 8th grade, and I met him at a tournament and kind of didn't think anything much of it. Like I talked to him a few times throughout the year randomly. I was an 8th grade kid. I don't even know why I was talking to him, but then like forget about him for a few years. And then I'm like watching, I don't know, like a small, it wasn't even UFC, like a small MMA show. And I'm like, wait a minute, is that kid? That's that kid. And then like the next year he was on UFC just beating everyone's ass.
Yeah. Pure talent.
Yeah. Well, his two brothers are in the NFL.
Yeah, it's funny because he's like the runt of the litter, you could say.
Yeah.
As the best fighter of all time, runt of the litter. It's like kind of hilarious.
Well, his older brother Arthur, who played a long career in NFL, was actually a better wrestler at heavyweight than John was. He was like probably a 3-time New York State champ. John was, I say only like a 1-time New York State champ. But the actual was wild. The tournament I met him at was just like a small local tournament, and he actually almost got beat in the finals, but he had a pretty tough matchup, but he won like a really close match. But it was like kind of hyped up, like, yeah, this kid he took like maybe like 4th in the state the year before, and the kid he was going up against was maybe like went to states but didn't place, and it was like a barn burner match.
You know, man, this is going to be a podcast exclusively about wrestling nostalgia, but there's always in sport, there's a little bit of a difference between being a fan and being a fan/participant.
Yep.
And I think as a participant, as a fan, and I think many fans don't succumb to this, but you start seeing these rankings that fighters get and state championships in wrestling as almost like a video game of characters and their ratings. And, if you have a power level of like 8,000 and your opponent 7,000, they just don't ever beat you, kind of Dragon Ball Z style. It just can't happen. The thing is that like not anything can happen, but there's always a couple of shit situations where some like kid with just some fucking weird kid will just come out and just beat a bunch of people for no goddamn reason. And you're like, who the fuck? I remember there's one kid, he was older than me. There was a guy in a wrestling team who was a senior when I was a freshman. And I looked up to him, and he was a very nice guy. And he didn't really go to wrestling camps. He only wrestled during each season. And then, like, when they wanted him around, he was on vacation with his family in Arizona or some crazy shit. And then he would come in, and preseason he would train, and he would always train hard. But he was such an athletically gifted person. It was a fucking Jewish kid of all people. It was just hilarious. And he would do weird shit in matches that just didn't make any sense to anybody, including his opponents. Like, I remember the coaches being like, come on, Ruben, double. Okay. All right, do that. That's good. He had no idea what he was doing. And I remember he had a kid at our local tournament. And Ruben ended up going to states a couple times, but he had a kid in a local tournament who was third in the state. He was like, one of those, like, he was a stud, right? Ruben, like, made this kid – I think he might have beaten him or taken him within like a point of defeat. And the kid walked away. He was like, what the fuck was that? Who the fuck was that guy? And it was like, he's a nobody. He's wrestled a total of 4 months in his life. Like, he's like, fuck. And it's one of the, I mean, that's how John Jones came up, as nobody knew who he was. He just ran through everybody. So it's funny when people get a little bit too caught up and like, what's his name? Oh man, this division sucks. Like, give it 2 months. The division might not suck anymore. Like, there's always a chance that some person's going to come seemingly to everyone else out of nowhere and just really upset some big title holders.
Yeah, well, I think John had like a very unique style too. Kind of what you're talking. I think anybody who grew up wrestling knows exactly what you're talking about. They all knew that kid. There was always a kid either on your team or a kid on another team who has no ability in terms of like at like the level of kids that he's going to wrestle with. Like somehow he just goes out there. I mean, shit, I even had it happen to me one time. I was in the finals of a tournament, beat this kid earlier in the year. I think it was like maybe 8-0, 8-1. He was a goofy kid, but I kind of just like took him down and didn't let him do anything. Wrestled him the second time. He comes like right out of the gate and like somehow we're like tied up and I get hit in a standing cradle out of all things from the feet. Next thing I know, I'm on my back. And I'm getting back. He's getting back points, and I go, "What the hell just happened?" Like, we're 30 seconds in the match. I'm down 5-0. And I was like, "Wait a minute, this isn't the same kid." But it was. He just was goofy as fuck, and I didn't expect someone to come. But he came out just like had nothing to lose, so doing something crazy.
There was at one of our high school tournaments, we had a pretty big high school, like a pretty we never placed at our high school tournament. Our tournament was big enough to where other schools won it. They were just better at wrestling than we were. So our tournament was like, our own tournament was pretty esteemed. It was so esteemed that we never did well at it. But there was a kid that I watched. He was like, he had red hair. He was nerdy as shit. He had glasses on, tons of freckles. He was relatively skinny, with these incredibly long arms. And I was like, he was in like, just like not even quarterfinals or just regular matchups. And I watched him go up against this like jacked kid. And when you're in high school, like the jacked guy, you're like, that guy's just going to beat everybody. Your coaches tell you better, but you don't care because you're like, look, fuck that guy.
You're like, I watched Vision Quest. That shoot.
Yeah, he's going to literally murder somebody. So this kid would lock up, standing cradle, and just put everyone on their back.
Oh my God.
And these guys walked away like, what the fuck just happened to me? He did every single person like that and then just stood on the podium and won the whole goddamn thing. God. And we were just like, there's nobody like, when someone like ties up with you, you're like, I'm not going to get pinned out of this position.
Standing cradle. Like, I'm not gonna
and then all of a sudden
here.
They fall backwards with you in their hands. You're rolling and you're like, I'll just roll through this. And you're like, wait a minute, I'm not rolling anymore.
Yeah. And now the ref
what the hell happened? Unbelievable. It's the audacity to standing cradle someone is just super impressive.
I've had it happen.
Yeah.
I can attest to it.
You're that guy. Sometimes. You're that guy that goes home and just shakes his head.
I just like felt, I could like tell like the whole gym just was like, went silent. They're like, did that really happen?
Did you get out of it or no?
No, I got pinned.
Fuck.
But it was like, I fought it for like the whole, like it wasn't like as soon as I got rolled back, like that's what, most of the time, as soon as you get rolled back, like you're just pinned. I got rolled back. It was even worse because I like recognized it. I was like, okay, we can fight this. We're good. But I'm like, I'm not getting out of it. Another thing is I'm short. I'm a short kid. So like cradles are always like a kryptonite type thing. And this kid's tall, if you face a tall, lanky kid and you're short and stocky, like they're if the kid only tries to do is cradle you for 3 periods, like that might be his best option. Like that was like me.
100%. 100%.
So from wrestling, how'd you get into bodybuilding? What was that transition?
So my wrestling experience wasn't actually great because we went through a bunch of different coaches and they didn't they kind of used exercise as punishment for us.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a lot of wrestling programs.
For some reason, it just didn't. I was an exercise addict in training, so I couldn't understand exercise as bad. Like I remember I had a philosophical realization early in wrestling where I was like, okay, if training makes us better and we want to get better, wouldn't rewarding us with more training be more intelligent than punishing us with more training?
Yeah.
So, and I was during wrestling. So during high school, I took Adderall for attention deficit disorder.
Yeah.
And one of the side effects was that it would make me robotic and unathletic, which was really weird. You know that flow you have where you just know where you are in space and you're just grooving it, like feeling your hips out.
Yeah,
like somebody takes a shot on you and you're like, oh my God, you're just never getting out of this.
Yeah.
Like I'm just going to staple you to the ground. That just went. It was just gone. So what ended up happening is like I would actually get worse throughout the wrestling season as I lost touch with my ability to communicate with my own body, which sucked. And then, so wrestling itself wasn't a super awesome experience for me, even though I got to be sort of decent at it.
Yeah.
But, and then something had to take its place. I definitely wasn't good enough to go to college to wrestle, and I went to college for academics. And by the time I went to college, I was so burnt out on the idea of wrestling. Like I would literally every year, I would right after wrestling season, I would basically start lifting super hard again because I couldn't lift while wrestling. It was just too much. So I would just be addicted to lifting. And then by the time I got to college, I was like, I just want to lift. So I started powerlifting. And I did it competitively because I think I had to compete in something. And then eventually through powerlifting, somehow I started reading bodybuilding magazines like Flex Magazine. I think I got one as a gift. And I was just I was nothing short of fascinated. The fact that human beings like this existed was just like, oh my God. And I started training for bodybuilding. And then as I was training for bodybuilding, I started to miss grappling again. So then I got back into jiu-jitsu. And now the circle is complete, so to speak.
That your story is kind of similar to mine. By the time I didn't even actually end up wrestling my senior year of high school, just because I got so burnt out of it. I mean, I started, I think, too young. I don't think you should really start at 5 years old. But then again, I've told this story on the podcast before, but it's actually kind of relevant here. So my first tournament when I was 5 years old, in my first tournament, I wrestled Kyle Dake, who is still wrestling to this day. He's a four-time national champion.
That's a good start.
Yeah, so that was my first tournament. So kind of talking like, okay, I'm saying that you probably shouldn't start at 5 years old. Well, he started at 5 years old, and it's worked out for him. But
I think it's not for everyone, and I think it depends on the coaching staff you have, the personality you have, et cetera. That you're just at higher risk for burnout if you start early. If it's managed well, you're at lower risk. But I imagine like most suburban athletics, it wasn't managed at all. You just kind of did it. Your parents just kind of sent you off. And
Well, another thing I talk about too is I played football when I was little, so it was like it gave me something else to do because I'm like, if I'm doing something, I am all fucking about it. Like that's what I'm doing. So when I was younger, I played football. So it was like, okay, during football season, I kind of forget wrestling, but then wrestling season, I start wrestling. Then in the summer, I still wrestle, but then fall comes, I'm going to play football. But then once in high school, I was a tiny, tiny kid. So in high school, like playing football wasn't really an option. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to focus 100% of my time on wrestling. I mean, that's my main sport anyway. But that turned out, I think probably if I had to pinpoint anything, that was probably what burnt me out. Because I just, from that point forward, it was just wrestling or training for wrestling.
That makes sense. It's interesting. There is a gentleman who I trained in jiu-jitsu with occasionally. It was at a gym close to ours in Kansas City where I started. And he had a kid who was, it's like 8 years old when I moved away.
Yeah.
And he is just an adorable little kid. His dad is a former bodybuilder and a current judo and jiu-jitsu black belt. it was one of the best psychological approaches to training I have ever seen. I watched the dad coach his kid at like 50 tournaments.
Yeah.
And the only things he ever said was, "Good job, buddy. You having fun?"
Yeah.
Like, he would tell him tips, but like afterwards, it doesn't matter win or lose. He'd be like, "Hey man, how was that?" The kid would be like more concerned than the dad was.
Yeah. See, that was not my experience.
For sure. It was not mine either. So, and then after, in addition to that, I talked to the guy and he's like, "Here's what we do. We never cut weight." And he told me there's other 8-year-olds, like their parents have them on like turkey and broccoli
Yeah,
for
I can believe
a couple
it.
days to make. I mean, that's fucking clinically insane. Child Protective Services type shit.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is insane. Or just ignorance of nutrition. Your kid is great. Here's your number one priority as an 8-year-old is to grow.
Yeah.
You dumb asshole, not to fucking win junior league. Nobody gives a
Yeah, no
shit.
one gives a
Bullshit
shit,
states.
yeah.
You're out of fucking mind.
Yeah.
So in any case, he said that what he does is they train judo, jiu-jitsu, and wrestling year-round, but they only compete in one of those for a couple of months at a time.
Yeah, I like that
And then they
idea.
leave him behind. So he cycles through so that nothing ever gets – so he can focus on one thing and nothing ever gets too overwhelming with everything being like, "Oh, I've got this other competition," and nothing gets too interfering. I was like, holy shit, you're brilliant. And, of course, his kid – just did ridiculous shit in kids tournaments. Like I saw him headlock a kid's fucking basically his head off.
Yeah,
It was just like you're going up against a guy who knows as much grappling as like a high school senior. And
Yeah.
it was just hilarious. But he was super respectful, super nice to all the other kids. And I was like, man, this is how you really got to do it. But how often does that really happen?
Yeah, not very often. Well, I think I heard a statistic one time with the NFL draft, and it was like, I don't know, like maybe like 28 out of 32 first-round picks played multiple sports in high school.
Oh, wow.
I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. There is definitely – oh, sorry, give me 1 second. Oh, just check the phone is working. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, come
We
on.
good?
Oh, come on. There we go. Are we back?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, cool. This is actually something we learned in the PhD program and have taught for a while. And long-term athlete development is, believe it or not, a pretty decently studied thing. And there is, one of the fallacies in it is hyper-specialization of youth athletes. Because people think, man, how do we make machines? You got to start them on playing golf when they're 2 or tennis when they're 2. It turns out, like in Soviet and East German sports schools, they didn't even specialize until they were like maybe 10 years old. And before that, they just did general athletic development that was games-based. You just play fucking physical games until you're more or less starting to get grown up.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they pick a sport that they think you will like and that you're genetically good at. And then you slowly begin to specialize in that sport. Funny enough, even at very high-level athletes would take at least about a month away from their sport every year to like do active rest, where they would play basketball and soccer and walk around with a dog and dumb shit like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And you think like there's videos of Andrei Milanichev, powerlifter, jogging on the beach. You're like, what the fuck is he jogging for? It was because he's been inculcated in general physical preparedness his entire life.
Yeah, yeah.
I guarantee he's never going to burn out on powerlifting because he does other shit when the time is right. So so when people think like, oh, I want like the East German machines, like great, then don't specialize your kid until they're 10 years old. And they're like, what do you mean? Like that's where do you think these machines come from?
Yeah.
What you're doing is you're making a burnout. Who's that one guy? Well, we're on the subject. I always forget his name. He's a high school football star in the United States, and he was the ultimate example of a burnout.
Todd Marinovich.
The documentary on him is
The 30 for 30 was great.
I want to say fascinating, but the right term is morbid.
Yeah. Well, his dad, I think, wasn't he one of the first strength and conditioning coaches in the NFL? I think.
That would make sense.
I think he worked on, yeah, I think so.
He also fed his son protein shakes in the cradle.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it was
gave him
crazy.
football toys to, there's one of those like sociocultural things where like, if your dad is a dictator, whatever he says until you're the age of 12 to 14, you will do,
Yep.
and you will be really good. And then anything he says after that, you will hate and you will rebel.
Yep.
Like, it's funny because nobody ever asked Todd if he wanted to play football. And when someone finally asked him, he was like, no, I never wanted to play football.
It just happened that
I
he was
just
a
wanted to
first-round draft
skateboard."
pick at that point.
Exactly. Can you imagine, like, putting the fucking ball down after a state championship game, sitting down in a locker room, people like, good game. And you're like,
Yeah.
like, how do you think you played? You're like, I don't care.
Well, yeah, then
really
he was
don't.
at USC. I think that's when he started getting into like,
He started to
drug
fall apart.
Yeah.
Well, because he wasn't around his dad anymore, man.
No.
When you live at home, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
But then he like literally just started like missing practices, getting into drugs, and it was kind of like, hey, if you want the worst case scenario for hyper specialization of athletics, here it is. And the thing is, the average case, of course, isn't that bad, but the average case is still like in high school, they just get disinterested because they've been doing it damn long. They've never liked it, or they're burnt out. Or the worst thing is when they have enough chronic injuries by then.
Yep.
I mean, that's just sad. Like if your kid has sport injuries that are chronic by age 14.
Yeah, I was saying in high school.
Holy shit.
Insane. Well, I think his, speaking of Marinovich's, I think his dad actually ended up training BJ Penn at one point. Crazy how that works.
In strength and conditioning.
Yeah, in strength and conditioning. I think so.
Trippy.
Yeah, look that
BJ
up.
Penn never burned out, so that's good.
Well, I don't think it went well though. Like I think it was like kind of like they did it for a little bit, maybe like a couple training camps, and then I don't know, it didn't work out. But yeah, I think there's. I have to look that up. I can't remember where I heard that.
It's so hard to navigate the landscape of judging individuals that have worked with fighters based on the results with their fighters, and even more particularly how well they got along with them. Because let's be honest, I'm sure you've known a lot of wrestlers, and fighters are from that pack and similar anyway. Fighters are a mixed breed of sometimes very good, diligent, intelligent people, all the way down to people that, in spite of everything they're physically trying to do, they're still good at beating people up. And just the biggest scumbag pieces of shit that you could imagine. And I think whenever you're good, people just assume you have every other good quality going for you. So they'll be like, hey, man, I heard this one guy trains this one guy. And I'm like, yeah, that strength coach sucks. And they're like, well, how come what's his name hired him? Yeah. Because what's his name has an IQ of a fucking doorknob. Do you think he knows anything about training? I guarantee you he doesn't even know anything about fighting. That's why he has a fight coach, because the coach is like, don't do anything you think is a good idea. Do what I tell you. Like, and anyone who's coached fighters and jiu-jitsu grapplers and wrestlers will tell you people are different. You coach someone like Ryan Hall. Do you know who Ryan Hall is?
I don't know if I do.
He's an MMA guy. He's from jiu-jitsu at the highest levels, and he's just super brainy. And I remember he was getting coached. He was on The Ultimate Fighter, and he was getting coached, and he'd be like, kind of just do his own thing better. And it'd be like, okay, this guy's clearly super smart. He doesn't need anyone's help, or he'll get the help he needs. But some guys, I mean, you literally have to physically restrain them from going to like titty bars the night before their fight. And then it's like, oh man, I heard that one guy was a strength coach, but it didn't work out. I'm like, man, that's probably a good reflection on the strength coach, It's just super, because like with BJ Penn, people think like, oh man, like I wonder why it didn't work. And you're like, man, BJ Penn's not exactly known to be the most fight-oriented, stable, dependable guy. I mean that with all due zero like hate. It's just he's just kind of been more of like a life traveler kind of person, where he's doing some things, and some of them are fight related and some are not. You know what I mean? Well,
even going back to John Jones, perfect example. He talks about doing cocaine the week leading up to fighting Cormier the one time.
Yeah, I guess you got to do what you got to do. And then there's guys that are like GSP, GSP's a fucking machine, and he's just nobody's ever questioned that. So if GSP likes a coach, and if he gets along well with them, I can at least tell you the coach is probably not a bullshit artist. Maybe he is not completely correct on everything, but at least GSP seems like the kind of person that's very task oriented. But that's not all fighters, and I think people just sort of, it's funny. Sometimes you get opportunities to like, hey, do you want to work with this fighter or with this group of fighters to help them? Sometimes you're tempted to be like, yeah, they're famous. And sometimes you're just like, you know what? Somebody else can work with them.
It'd be a bigger headache.
I'm fine. Yeah. Like I'm okay with my advice being ignored by anyone, fighter or not. But I've worked with enough fighters to know that maybe a good half of them, you tell them stuff diet wise and training wise, and they're like, and they just, some combination of don't do it at all, or just do something completely opposite, or path bullshit integrate your stuff and not enough to make a difference. I guess like all athletes are.
I was going to say, really, in most athletes, especially, I don't know, like there's this, coming from like a wrestling background, but I think there's probably most athletic backgrounds, there's just this tendency to always just try to do more. And it doesn't necessarily have to be better. It's just like, I'm just going to do a lot of work and we'll just kind of see what happens type deal.
Yep. And also a tendency to do more of what you're good at and what you like and less of everything else. So like if you tell a guy who needs to get stronger but is really good at jiu-jitsu technique that he needs to lift weights, he'll try lifting weights. He'll suck at it. It'll hurt. He doesn't like it. And he's like, I could just roll more. And he just starts rolling more. And you're like, I already know you're good at that. You need to get stronger. And he's like, I don't know. I don't really like lifting heavy weights. I'm like, I know that's the problem. Is that you're going to go up against a guy who's just as technical as you, who likes lifting weights, and he's going to fucking shit you out the other end. And then what? Right. So it's kind of like sometimes there's some emotional reasoning to all that stuff. But sometimes you get folks that are just like, and they really invest in the process. And then, man, those are the kind of people that really have to watch out for, because can you imagine knowing that your opponent is the kind of guy that takes advice really well and does what his nutritionist says and what his coach says? Like, you better find some fucking cracks in that armor, because he probably doesn't have any.
There's probably not many, especially if he's been doing it for a long time. Has been very consistent with the training and nutrition and everything, and being on 100%. Top of it. That consistency 100%. Is what's key and everything.
Yeah. One of those, like, it's one of the special, I think, allures and mistakes wrestlers have, even in MMA, is that you just don't last in wrestling if you're way too of the free spirit kind of person. Like, especially if you go into Olympic caliber, like Daniel Cormier, like, you gotta be at some peace with rigidity. You just don't make it that far. And then that when it's at least fight camp, wrestlers can buckle down.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas some other folks, strikers and stuff, maybe they can. Maybe you got a barroom brawler that's just got really, really good hands. I don't know how his fight camps go. Sometimes they don't go at all.
Probably won't have any.
Which, by the way, do you remember the Kimbo Slice Dada 5000 fight?
Yep. I remember it. Yeah.
Do you remember giving up on all humanity?
Yeah.
While watching, I was like, I think it was one of the best-selling fights of all time.
I think so.
Of the hype.
Yeah.
Man,
I kind of went into it though thinking like, this isn't going to be too impressive.
I literally halfway through the fight, people bullshit like, I could beat that guy up.
Yeah.
Halfway through the fight, I was like, I could destroy Dada 5000.
Yeah.
The only thing I would do is physically run around the ring and tap him on any part of his body for 1.5 minutes straight. He would gas completely. I would single leg him and I would just smash him. That would be it, because he would be literally dying, and he literally was dying.
Yeah, they both were dying. And then as soon as someone, if someone knew anything on the ground too, once you got him down, it would be all over.
Totally, but I remember Kimbo Slice.
But neither one of them
was
anything.
First of all, he didn't know enough on the ground, but he was mounted. Remember, he was mounted on Dada 5000, and he didn't know enough to end it. And he was so gassed, I don't think he could have ended it.
Yeah, I don't think he could have. I remember that. Yeah, because I was actually thinking that. I was like, yeah, shit. Like, I remember that fight where he, it looked like he was going to be able to end it. And then you came to the realization that, he doesn't have it.
Funny enough, this is something, again, I probably didn't know, but there's ways in jiu-jitsu to lay on someone's chest area that gas them out, even though they don't gas you out. And all you have to do is pretend to go for submissions.
Yeah. Well,
they will tap within 30 seconds. Dada 5000 would have tapped within 15, but Kimbo didn't know that. He just didn't know that technique. So it was like, oh my God, you didn't even have to punch him or submit him. You could have just squished him and won, but we don't have an arsenal.
Yeah, they didn't. Yeah. Well, it was kind of an interesting path to MMA or to UFC. In anyway, it was pretty much straight off from YouTube.
Yep. Backyard brawls.
Yeah. Just
non-technical boxing.
Yeah. And then I think he went on The Ultimate Fighter maybe, and he
got fucked up by everybody. But he was actually a super nice, respectful guy. It turned out.
But then he somehow still ended up, selling fights.
Yeah, because he's got that appeal. He looks cool, that's for sure. You look like Mr. T. You're going to sell some fights.
Say, you're going to sell some fights because people are going to want to see what you can do.
Either want to see you get fucked up or you fuck somebody
exactly.
up. Dada 5000 was in every way unqualified to be a fighter.
I didn't really know much about his background.
He was like a fight promoter in South Florida. And not a very good one. Yeah. And he had some fights that were just against other technically wholly deficient people. And then he ended up always had beef with Kimbo Slice. And then they finally settled their beef in the cage or something. I can't believe Kimbo Slice is dead too.
Yeah,
that's
I know.
Super fucked up.
That's wild.
It's just, fucking, he was like in his prime too. Like,
yeah, well, he's a little older, wasn't he? Like
40s, dude, early 40s, I think.
Yeah. You think that was his
crazy.
prime?
You know, when you've had no prime, it's really difficult to find out which.
It could have been his prime.
I mean, he was certainly in the prime of his life, if not athletic.
For
career,
life, I would say that. Life.
And he was like, when you looked at him, he was jacked, he was lean.
Yeah.
You know, you can, like, when someone's like, you know, that, like, this is a super morbid fucking topic, but why not, since we don't want this to be the regular podcast anyway. You know, when someone does their last interview, and you don't know that they're going to die, but, like, the last time you see them in the news, you look and you're like, oh, shit, how old is that person?
Yeah.
Or like, oh, what's his name looks rough.
Yeah.
Right? Kimbo did not look rough.
You have that thought in your head. Like, you see him on TV, and you're like, I'm probably not going to see him again.
Exactly. And then when they, like, you pull up your iPhone, and it's like, what's his name died at 88, you're like, I love that person. It sucks that they're dead, but I don't think anyone was surprised.
Yeah.
And with Kimbo, it was just like, fuck. Like, you start to worry about yourself. You're like, man, am I okay?
Yeah.
You know, like, he seemed like, could you imagine, like, him walking around, like, let's say going to a hotel, checking in, talks to the checkout counter guy. You think that you've got a microphone right to that checkout counter guy after, be like, you think that man is going to die soon? He'd be like, what? It's a grown man. He's fine. Yeah. You know, after an 80-year-old man, he'd be like, I think that guy's going to die soon. He'd be like, oh, you know, it's not for me to say, but, you know,
there's a chance.
kind of looks pretty decrepit. So it's just, I guess it's always unsettling when an individual that is in apparently external good health takes the dive. And then Dada 5000 had hyperkalemia, I think. Yeah. Right after the fight, because I think he Jesus, he ended up having to cut weight to make. It
wasn't he? Didn't he get like hospitalized or right afterwards or something?
Correct. Yeah, his heart was in technical failure the whole time. He ate a ton of bananas to up his sodium. Like, whoever the hell was telling him how to cut weight was like, either they were wildly wrong or he just misinterpreted the shit out of what they were saying.
Could have been either.
Some combination of both.
Yeah, probably both.
So it's it was just like, I remember the fallout after that fight was like, Dada 5000 hospitalized, and people were like, man, with the way that fight went, that does not surprise me. Well, I think he never got knocked out. He literally just fell.
Yeah, I think Bellator took some heat after that.
Because there were whoever medically cleared them should not have been. Yeah, there's man, I saw one fight. This is super fucked up. It was a local fight. One of our guys was fighting at Kansas City. Good fight promotion, fine local promotion. And it was an amateur, a pro-am. So there's an amateur round, and there was some girls fighting. One girl was in clearly physical fitness shape. And one of her opponents, like, when I say morbidly obese, I'm not using the technical cut off. I mean a person that would look obese in any situation, including Walmart. Like, it's a person who's fat for Walmart. And I mean that in the most descriptive and non-judgmental way
I think
possible.
that's a good category. You're fat for Walmart.
For sure. Like 5'2" to 5'4", over 300 pounds, if that puts it into perspective. And she threw hands with this girl for a little bit. And then the other girl, I don't hit her so much as grooved her face. And the girl fell over, and in order to get up to fight this girl again, she had to put her own hand on her knee.
This is a fight.
It's just like, you can't get up under your own power, and in the middle of a fight?
Yeah.
Like, I understand, that's how I get up after a jiu-jitsu match, because I'm a lazy piece of shit.
Yeah.
But if you want to see me get up without using my hands at all, I can just spring up to life.
Yeah, you can do it.
In a fight, I'm sure as hell not putting my hand on my fucking knee, because I'm keeping that shit up here. But, it was just, I remember seeing that
can
literally
you
as it was happening.
Being in a fight and your opponent does that? What are you thinking?
I'm winning. This is awesome. But then you're like, man, this is not going to feel like a great victory because that person
wait
beat
a minute.
themselves.
What if I get beat by this person?
Oh, no, yeah, that's right. The scary second thought, I better not fuck this up.
Yeah.
But it was just so.
It's kind of like wrestling a girl. I had to do that when I was little.
Oh, no shit. Yeah, see, I never had that opportunity. Did you beat her? Or did she beat you?
Yeah, this is actually a funny story. I was I can't remember how old I was. Probably like 5th grade, 6th grade, or whatever the age is. And at first, I see it up on the bracket. And the first thought is I got a girl this round. This is gonna be good. This is gonna be
Sure.
like a nice little
Easy
warm
round.
up, move on to the next round, whatever. But then like the second thought is, oh shit, like I can't lose this.
Because there's studs out there, man.
Yeah,
There's some girls.
like, there's
out
some
there
girls that are tough, and I actually do like some girls in the area that were pretty tough. And I was like, okay. So I just went like, I went crazy. There was no mercy. It was like shake hands, tie up, double leg, right to your back. Like, let's just get this over with.
That's fucked up, man.
Yeah.
You're a real piece of shit
Yeah,
back then.
I was like, I remember my dad afterwards. My dad was like a big hard ass with wrestling, even afterwards. And this was like maybe the only match in my life, hundreds of matches, where afterwards he was like, yeah, you were pretty aggressive in that match.
For sure. That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
A lot of my female buddies that do jiu-jitsu, especially when they're lower belt ranks, they'll say that some guys just lose it on them.
Yeah, yeah.
And then some guys are way too putty nice, and some guys give a good roll, and no, not one way or the other. It's a very complex dynamic, actually, because on the one hand, you want to give everyone your real.
Yeah.
And if you really believe in equality to that extent, if you're a female, you want guys to give you their all.
Yeah, yeah.
But then some guys will go above and beyond that and just get cheap and mean in order to win at all costs, which is fucked up if you do to a guy and a girl. So there's a lot of interesting stuff there. I remember one time, one of the guys on our team had to wrestle a girl, and he was one of the guys that hit puberty like later.
Yeah, yeah.
And she, whatever the equivalent of female puberty, she hit that shit running.
Yep.
And she was just straight up stronger.
Yep.
Like, just stronger, just like man. She had more man strength. And she headlocked him and pinned him.
Oh, boy.
Shortly.
Oh, shit.
And our coach pulled us aside, the whole team. And he was like, you listen up good. I don't want to hear a fucking thing about any of this.
Yeah.
You tell any of your friends at school, you're off the team. And I'll personally see to it it'll not be in a fun way. Do you understand me? And we were all like, because we all knew exactly what he was saying. Like, we want the same to us.
Yeah, yeah.
No one ever spoke. We didn't talk to him about it, even though he was a cool kid. He was laughing about it.
Yeah,
after.
he wasn't
but
mad.
when he was making jokes, we were like, ah.
Yeah.
And then we just never said anything about it. It was never mentioned in practice. It was never mentioned the entire rest of this kid's career, as far as I know. He was a good guy. I still know him. And he eventually, actually, that was like his freshman year. By his senior year, he was a good wrestler, and he would have tooled up. He tooled up a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was just hilarious because nobody ever spoke about it. It was like the most uniformity in group action I've ever seen. Because, teenagers just want to fucking costume.
Yeah.
They're
You
dying.
gotta imagine everyone wanted to.
Yeah, it was like the closest you ever come to like warrior code or honor culture. It was like, you do not speak about this. Do you understand? And everyone's like, yes. And no one ever mentioned it. Because you don't want to be. It's like someone's like joke about someone's grandma until she's actually dead, and then every human being knows it's not funny anymore.
It's not funny anymore.
Like
Or a
that was
parent
the
or
extent
something.
of like he got beat by a girl, and it was never going to be mentioned. That was it.
Yeah, you wouldn't want that to happen to you.
Yeah, I think like I don't know. It was always like every now and again we had a girl on our team later. And every now and again, someone not on the wrestling team would be like, "Oh, did she ever beat you guys?" And we'd always be like, "None of that is funny. That's not a joke. She's over here fucking killing it. Why don't you join the team,
Yeah, yeah.
bitch?" And they were always like, "I don't know." Like, if you're not on the wrestling team, you don't get to joke about that shit.
Did you? This is kind of like a different line, but kind of similar. Did you ever get like the kids who like maybe played like football or lacrosse or like other sports,
Yes.
and they thought that just because they were like tough that they could probably be good at wrestling?
Well, I was somewhere in the 103 to 119 range for the first 2 years of my wrestling
Yeah,
career.
that was me. I was like 96, 103.
There you go. We sure did grow up.
Yep.
So guys would look at me. So I was a freshman. I remember one senior who was moderately athletic. He was like, "Hey, I bet I could beat you."
Yeah.
And I was like, "I bet you can't."
Yep.
And then we got some friends and we actually went to the wrestling room and, he tried his goddamnedest, but I had 3 months of wrestling under my belt and he had zero. And you know how it is, like the kind of openings someone who never wrestled give you they're just like, it's like a joke to a wrestler.
Oh,
You're like,
yeah.
you're not really going to do that, are you? They fall for all the bait. Like, you snap him down and he pops up as high as he can.
Yep. And then
Like, all I need is one snap down,
Yep.
and you're going to have your legs together anyway, and then
Yep.
you're just helpless. So that was the case with me. Because, you know, like, there's a guy in a wrestling team who was like 240 and 6'2", and nobody asked him if I bet I could beat you. You know, and that never happened. But the 100-pounder, little bullshit, like, little fucking Jewish kid with weird colored hair or whatever. I had, like, blonde hair, the team thing. And they were like, you pussy, I bet I can beat your ass. And I'm like,
Yep.
okay, let's try. The thing is, like, if he was like 160, 170, I would have been like, man, you probably can. And I would have tried. Maybe he would have beat me.
Yeah.
But this guy was like another Jewish kid who was like 115.
Oh, and
he just happened to be a senior. And I was like, motherfucker, you are in my league, except I'm better at everything that we're going to be doing than you are.
Yep.
The thing is, that was cool is he wrestled me. I beat him. He shook my hand. He was super respectful. And we were cool ever since after that.
Well, sometimes, trust me, I've been in some backyard. I think I'm honestly, and I was thinking about this the other day. I can't remember the conversation, but I was like, man, my record in on the mat is pretty good, but my record in backyard wrestling, I think, is undefeated.
Undefeated, man, for sure.
I think it is undefeated
against dumb assholes who who should know better.
So yeah, it's just all the things you say. It's just so fun. It's fun, but I used to almost egg it on in a way because I was always a small kid.
Shit.
You know, I was a tiny. I was the 103-pounder. Like, you know, it was just like everyone. I kind of had like a chip on my shoulder type thing. Like everyone thought I was just small, and I mean, a lot of people like knew. I mean, I'm like from a pretty small town. Like, everyone knew, like, oh, yeah, he's a good wrestler. Like, it wasn't so much like, oh, they think they're gonna be able to beat me because I wasn't a good wrestler, which is they think 'cause I'm so small that it's not gonna matter. You know, kids are like maybe like 130 pounds or something, and I'd just be like, okay, well, we can try this if you'd like to.
How did they take the defeats?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, a lot of times what would happen is I would just like take them down, and then I would just hold them down, and they couldn't do anything. So then that would be like the defeating purpose, like, of them afterwards just being like, okay, well, I couldn't do anything, so I'm going to have to take this in stride and be a good sport here, because like, it wasn't even just like a beating. Like, it wasn't like, oh, he just like scored points on me. It was I took him down and just held him down. And it was like, okay, you can
ultimate submission.
Yeah, you
is
can
like,
try to do something
move.
now if you want. Try to get out. Try to get up. Oh, you can't.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, I could just punch you in the face right now. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, though.
Yeah. That's actually even more conclusive than punching someone in the face.
Yeah.
Because they can't say, well, if he hadn't punched me, I wouldn't have blah, blah. It's like, no, he had every chance and he still let you go, but you still couldn't do anything. You had every attempt to prove yourself and you didn't.
Yep.
So, and I guess it's cool because, like, I think a lot of sort of those kinds of situations that I've ever seen, most of them end like the pretty amicably. Kids are like, you know, once kids go at it, they usually are like, okay, that's what happened. It's different than like when you've got bullying involved. There's a lot more personal shit.
Oh, yeah.
But did anyone ever try to bully you or no?
Not really. I was never really
Makes
bullied.
sense.
Yeah, I was never
That makes
really
sense because they knew who you were.
Yeah, I was never really bullied, like, in the sense of picked on or anything.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. I honestly never was really like I was aware of it, like I knew it happened, but I was never received it and never gave it, never really was around it much.
Interesting. I was bullied pretty substantially until I started wrestling.
Yep.
And actually, it's funny, I wasn't even good at wrestling yet. As soon as I was on the wrestling team, I was never bullied again. There was this understanding that only the wrestlers bullied each other, and theirs was much more good-natured bullying.
Yeah.
And if you, even the most hated wrestler, if he was a piece of shit little kid and you were huge and you beat him up, the wrestling team you had a problem with.
Wow.
And nobody fucking, it's just not a good idea. You don't want to
Yeah.
have a problem. So it was kind of one of those things, like as soon as you joined the wrestling team, you just were never bullied again. Maybe by the wrestlers to some extent, but never like in a, no one would be crazy. At my high school anyway, no one would be crazy enough to bully you. Because like as soon as people found out I was a wrestler, people just talked to me differently.
Yeah.
it
That's
was kind
interesting.
of weird.
That is interesting. We running out of time here?
I think so.
Cool,
I think it's about time for me to part.
We have to do another one.
Yeah, I agree.
You down for that?
Yeah, just send me an email right after this, schedule me in, and
we'll do another one, and we'll do the second one, and we'll talk about some training and nutrition. This was too fun.
Sounds great.
Once we got rolling, I was like, yeah, we just got to keep this going.
Yeah, we'll post it up and I'll share it, and we'll see if anyone else can run down nostalgia lane with the two of us.
Awesome. Yeah, so we'll definitely have Mike back on the show. We'll talk some training nutrition, but how can people get more information about you?
RenaissancePeriodization.com, at RP Strength on Instagram, Mike Israetel on Facebook. It's a public account. Come follow me, come troll me. And I train at Balance Studios in Philadelphia. So if you ever want to come beat my ass in jiu-jitsu, stop on by for an open mat, and you can stomp me and embarrass me, and I will cry and I will run with my open arms.
I don't know if anybody's going to take you up on that. Maybe.
We'll see.
Has it happened yet?
Yes, people who know me as Dr. Mike or whatever
have come in
from other gyms, and sometimes they're all like at another Balance gym affiliate of ours, and they find out that I'm over there and they come for an open mat, and they'll want to roll with me, and that's super cool. Yeah.
It's awesome. Cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I tool them up extra hard then. I'm like, you motherfucker, don't you ever fucking call me out. I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. No,
you might have to, if depends on the situation.
Yeah, my approach to open mat and jiu-jitsu is we can make the roll as hard as the other person wants. If you want a flow roll, I flow. If you want a roll that's nice and competitive, we'll step up if I'm not hurt or something. If you want to be a cocksucker and grind chokes across the jaw, it can be arranged that your roll is going to be a little less comfortable than you wanted. But that, upper belts almost never do that. That's some like white belt, blue belt kind of shit. Like, I'm going to be mean. It's like, okay, you can be mean for the next 5 seconds. I can make this go on a lot longer if you're interested.
Yeah. At first I was like a little, like when I first got into it, I was kind of weird because I didn't know like what level to be at. You know what I mean? Because I was like, I don't really know anything from a jiu-jitsu standpoint. I just know wrestling. So I might be at like a 10, but I don't really mean to be. Like,
totally. You got that wrestling excuse. When you don't know jiu-jitsu, it's okay.
Yeah. Just
don't be intentionally like, so I actually have an easy answer for you. Do things that you think advance your position or hold the other guy down. Do things that intentionally hurt the person. I don't mean hurt in a damage way. Like if you grind your face, wrestlers do that anyway.
Yep.
If you're grinding your face into someone's chin in order to get them to turn their head, don't do that. In a tournament, for sure. In regular rolling with people you don't know, maybe it's not your first.
There's some weird things that if you didn't like grapple your entire life, like you don't recognize, like there's like head position, like there's like times like I've been in the gym like just like messing with people, like just especially when I lived up in New York still, a lot of my buddies that were at the gym, like we all were wrestlers, so we'd like be messing with each other and like would end up headbutting each other just because like it's like not even intentional, but we know you're there, so we move our head to like kind of stop you from going there. And
for sure
it's weird shit.
Yeah.
All right, man. Hey, I'll let you go, but we'll definitely have to do another one for sure.
Send me an email and I'll be right back on.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Absolute Strength Podcast. I know I had a ton of fun producing it for you. And before you go, if you could just drop me some feedback, I'd love it. I love reading your feedback. So you can go over to iTunes, leave a 5-star rating, write a little review, what you think of the podcast. I absolutely love it. I read every single one. But it's cool if you don't want to do that. I get it. No one wants to really go out of their way to do anything, let alone write a review. But I want to get your feedback. So drop me a line on Instagram at Hunt Fitness, or on Facebook, Kyle Hunt, or on Twitter, or send a pigeon or something. I don't know. I just want to hear your feedback. So if you want to give me some feedback, let me know what you think. Hit me up on Instagram at Hunt Fitness. And before you go, I have one last thing I want to say. I have a program I want you to check out. It's actually called the Absolute Strength Program, and the link is in the show notes. It's a program I designed to help increase my own squat, bench, and deadlift. And I got pretty strong off of it, and I think you're going to like it. It's a great book. Thousands of people have got amazing results from it. It's in the show notes. All right, guys. Until next time, until next episode, peace.